Good morning, AWS, and welcome to the AWS Morning Brief. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn, coming at you from San Francisco in lockdown, or wherever I happen to find AWS bills on the internet. This episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. Simple, understandable pricing. You can build architectures that scale vastly with their managed Kubernetes service. You can get single VMs that run the way you would expect them to. It's simple, it's straightforward. Their documentation is phenomenal. I don't say that lightly. And best of all, they continue to tolerate my ridiculous nonsense. To learn more, visit do.co/screaming. That's do.co/screaming. Now, what happened last week? Well, a lot, because these days every week seems to last 4 months. But what did AWS get up to? All Amazon Chime meetings now support up to 250 attendees. This is an early optimization that reflects Amazon Chime's eager hope to one day support up to 250 customers. Amazon Detective is now generally available. But what can you do with the Amazon Detective? It's a mystery. Amazon RDS now supports PostgreSQL 12. This managed database goes to 11 is now a statement of being out of date rather than one of being awesome. AWS Database Migration Service now supports replicating data to Apache Kafka streaming platform. The difference between using Route 53 as a database and using Kafka as a database is that when I talk about Route 53 as a database, I'm joking. AWS Elemental Media Store now supports CloudWatch metrics. This resolves a long-standing problem with Elemental Media Store, namely it didn't cost enough money. AWS Lambda now supports .NET Core 3.1. In a rare show of charity, AWS updates a supported Lambda runtime instead of saying, Lambda layers exist, now go build it your damn self. AWS Storage Gateway adds audit logs for Filed Gateway to address enterprise compliance requirements. This is either boring and irrelevant to you, or it means that suddenly you can use an incredibly handy AWS service that you couldn't before. Come to think of it, that describes pretty much every AWS feature announcement. New classroom course, the machine learning pipeline on AWS. Once again, AWS dreams of a world in which we're allowed to go to classrooms again. Review and remediate unintended access allowed on your AWS resources from outside your AWS organization. The IAM Access Analyzer is the second free resource that does this, the first, of course, being the front page of the New York Times. Simplify cloud resource management with AWS Service Management Connector for Jira Service Desk. AWS apparently attempts to compete with IBM Cloud. To manage your cloud resources, please open a Jira ticket. Amazon Code Guru Profiler flame graphs are now easier to use. Meanwhile, Code Guru remains difficult to use because it still charges per line of code that you put through it. Amazon Elastic File System announces 400% increase in read operations for general-purpose mode file systems. NFS, which is what EFS is built on top of, is file access across the network and, as a result, is notoriously slow. AWS tackles this problem by making the disks faster. Amazon GameLift in 2020. Major update now available in preview. AWS continues to build services for various audiences, in this case, game developers, and in turn markets them to infrastructure engineers. But let's test that theory. If you're listening to this and you're a game developer, can you ping me on Twitter at QuinnyPig, QUINNY Pig, and let me know. I'm betting less than 5 of you respond. This episode is also sponsored by DataStax Accelerate. That's the conference that I was originally going to keynote, but it has been transformed. Accelerate, a NoSQL original series, is a combination of live stream and on-demand, binge-worthy episodes that capture how users and enterprises alike are succeeding with NoSQL and Apache Cassandra. You can think of it as being like Netflix, only without the calories. Sign up at datastax.com/accelerate. That's DATA Stacks, STAX.com/accelerate. Amazon RDS for SQL Server now supports in-region read replicas. Well, this is a switch. Usually, services announce that they've gone from supporting the same region to working between regions. This one is the other way around because it's Microsoft SQL Server and nothing Microsoft does is normal. Amazon Sumerian supports exporting your scenes to GITF. GITF, of course, is being Amazon's own custom in-house pronunciation of GIF. Amazon Transcribe Medical now supports batch transcription of medical audio files. Sorry, but now is not the time to snark at all about Amazon Transcribe Medical, or frankly, anything that touches healthcare at all. This is an awesome release, and if it applies to you, use it. If it is too expensive and you want to use it, let me know, and I will move mountains on your behalf. AWS Glue now supports reading and writing to Amazon DocumentDB with MongoDB compatibility and MongoDB tables using Glue Spark ETL jobs. At some point, somebody is going to have to tell AWS and its customers that Glue is generally not considered a load-bearing structural element for most projects. Sellers, consulting partners, and data providers from Australia and New Zealand now available in AWS Marketplace and AWS Data Exchange. I choose to read that headline as a bunch of companies from the Southern Hemisphere are now looking to get acquired via the AWS Marketplace. It's a good plan. If you're going to acquire a company, you probably want it on your AWS bill. Receive notifications for AWS Code Build, AWS Code Commit, AWS Code Deploy, and AWS Code Pipeline in Slack. My kingdom for a block feature to be released for Slack. Congratulations to the APN partners completing Navigate tracks in the first quarter of 2020. True, the third month of the quarter did turn the obstacle course we'd painstakingly constructed into a death trap located inside of an active war zone, but congratulations to our surviving partners. Amazon Detective has been released, and not a single film noir joke is to be found in the entire blog post explaining what the detective is. I think that's a lost opportunity because AWS is generally not particularly humorous, except when it's not trying to be. Amazon Redshift Update, RA3.4 X-Large Instances. Out of sympathy for the current economic crisis, AWS is now offering a smaller Redshift node that, and I swear I'm not making this up, each costs only slightly over $2,300 a month to run. AWS Deep Composer is now generally available with new features. AWS Deep Composer is their machine learning keyboard, and it's the premier tool by which AWS attempts to rip humanity's soul out of its collective chest via AI. I'm, of course, on board for this and have two of them in my office. CloudWatch Contributor Insights for DynamoDB, now generally available. Expose your terrible DynamoDB access patterns for what they are, and then lament about how hard it is to fix them. Then watch Rick Houlihan's DynamoDB talks from the reInvents of yesteryear and lament about how easy he makes it all look. New. Use AWS IAM Access Analyzer in AWS organizations. That's right, the IAM Access Analyzer now becomes useful for something besides being a terrible week-long manual project for a junior DevOps. Now open, third availability zone in the AWS Canada Central region. Slowly but surely, every AWS region is gaining a third availability zone. Meanwhile, some Azure regions are apparently waiting to get a second server. Simplified time series analysis with Amazon CloudWatch Contributor Insights. Allow me to rewrite that incredibly wordy headline. AWS Service now explains what the hell that giant spike on the dashboard is. AWS Step Functions support in Visual Studio Code. AWS Step Functions is experimenting with sponsoring different things in different places. This week, they try sponsoring a competitor's IDE. BottleRocket, a special-purpose container operating system. This is a deep dive into what BottleRocket, motto, it's just BottleRocket, not AWS BottleRocket or Amazon BottleRocket, is and does. Please enjoy this exploration of GNU BottleRocket. AWS CLI v2 Docker image. AWS loses the packaging war, gives up, and instead just ships their CLI tool inside of a Docker container. This is the same level of disdain that development has had for operations for years when shipping their application code via container, but it is notable to see it happening from one company to its customers. Enhancing workload observability using Amazon CloudWatch embedded metric format. I will reserve judgment on this because they use the word observability, and I want to wait and see what Charity Majors says before I take a position on this. Selecting and migrating a Facebook API version for Amazon Cognito. Unfortunately, this discusses how to migrate to a new version of the Facebook API rather than how to migrate the hell off of Facebook entirely, because they are effectively a criminal enterprise at this point. TLS 1.2 to become the minimum for all AWS FIPS endpoints. Breaking news, a breaking change. And that's what happened last week in AWS. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn. Stay safe.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.